Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. Today we will discuss rest of the NSAID. Yesterday I have told you something about aspirin. Now we are going to discuss propionic acid derivatives. In this class ibuprofen was the first member and you well aware of brufen. Basically in brufen there is ibuprofen and the ibuprofen has both analgesic, antipyretic as well as anti-inflammatory activity. And the mechanism of action is the same as we have discussed with aspirin or other. The most important point is with ibuprofen or propionic acid derivatives is that it is effective in closing ductus arteriosus in preterm infants. Similarly, we have discussed the adverse effect profile of aspirin. It is the same as with ibuprofen. Ibuprofen and all its congeners are better tolerated than aspirin. These propionic acid derivatives have gastrointestinal side effects, but they are better tolerated as compared with aspirins. Gastric discomfort, nausea, vomiting are thought less than that of aspirin. Most important point is that they are usually not prescribed to pregnant women and they should be avoided in peptic ulcer patients. Pharmacokinetics is the same as with other NSAIDs. They enter the brain, synovial fluid and also cross the placenta. They are used as analgesic, antipyretic as well as anti-inflammatory. Next class is antranilic acid derivatives and the mefaminic acid derivative is the drug. They are analgesic, antipyretic and weaker anti-inflammatory drugs. Point to be remember that they are weaker anti-inflammatory drugs and moreover they exert peripheral as well as central analgesic action. With these derivatives, diarrhea is the most important dose-related side effect. And the epigastric distress and the gut bleeding is usually not significant. And it is indicated primarily as analgesic in muscle, joint and soft tissue injuries. Next class is aryl acetic acid derivatives and the drug is diclofenac. It is also very commonly used analgesic and mechanism of action is the same. They cause usually mild epigastric pain and very rare nausea and vomiting and gastric ulceration and bleeding are less common. Diclofenac is among the most extensively used NSAIDs that are employed in rheumatoid and osteoarthritis, bursitis, and ankylosing spondylitis. Similarly, toothache, dysmenorrhea, and post-traumatic and post-operative inflammatory conditions are well relieved by diclofenac. In oxycam derivatives, there is piroxicam. It is also analgesic as well as antipyretic as well as anti-inflammatory. The additional factor with oxycam derivative is that it decreases the production of IgM rheumatoid factor and leukocyte chemotaxis. Pharmacokinetics and adverse effects we are not going to discuss. Next drug is the pyrrolopyrrole derivative. The drug is ketorolac, a novel NSAID with potent analgesic and modest anti-inflammatory activity. It is frequently used in postoperative dental and acute musculoskeletal pain. In indole derivatives, the drug name is indomethacin. It is a potent anti-inflammatory drug with antipyretic action. A high incidence, about up to 50% of gastrointestinal side effects and CNS side effects are related with indole derivatives, and it is contraindicated in machinery operators because of its CNS side effects. Now are the preferential COX-2 inhibitors, and the drug name is nimesulide. It is weak inhibitor of prostaglandin synthesis and COX-2 selectivity. Anti-inflammatory action may be exerted by other mechanisms as well. For example, reduced generation of superoxide by neutrophils. Number 2, inhibition of PAF synthesis and tumor necrotic factor alpha release. Free radical scavenging and inhibition of metalloproteinase activity in cartilage. It has both analgesic, antipyretic as well as anti-inflammatory activity. And the adverse effect profile and the pharmacokinetics is the similar as we. Now are the selective COX-2 inhibitors. These are the most important nowadays. They cause little gastric mucosal damage. So occurrence of peptic ulcer and ulcer bleed is clearly lower with these traditional NSAIDs. They do not depress thromboxane A2 production by the platelets, because thromboxane A2 production by the platelet is COX-1 dependent. They do not inhibit platelet aggregation or prolong the bleeding time, but to reduce the prostacyclin I2 production by the vascular endothelium. You may be asked question, what is the difference between non-selective COX inhibitors and the selective COX-2 inhibitors? So you have to mention these points for explanation of your question. It has been concluded that selective COX-2 inhibitors should be used only in patients at higher risk of peptic ulcer or perforation or bleeds. If selected, they should be administered in the lowest dose for the shortest period of time. Moreover, they should be avoided in patients with history of ischemic heart disease, hypertension, cardiac failure, cerebrovascular disease who are predisposed to cardiovascular events. Now you should ask question, why? Why we should not use COX-2 inhibitors in all these patients? Because they do not depress thromboxane A2 production by the platelets because it is COX-1. They do not inhibit platelet aggregation. They do not prolong the bleeding time. And if you are prescribing the COX-2 inhibitors in the patients who are ischemic heart disease, so these patients will be at risk of developing angina or myocardial infarction, because this effect will be lost with these selective COX-2 inhibitors. So these selective COX-2 inhibitors are used only in high-risk peptic ulcer patients, or perforation or bleeds, and they should be given only for the shortest period of time. Thank you very much. In this contest, it is very important you should know what is the difference between selective COX-2 inhibitors and the non-selective COX inhibitors, and what is the advantages of selective COX-2 inhibitors on non-selective. And similarly, you may be asked question, what is the benefits and side disadvantages of both classes, selective COX-2 and non-selective COX-2. Thank you very much. This was all about your NSAIDs.